My parents funded my sister's lavish life, now she's broke, and I own everything. They ignored me, spoiled her, and let her humiliate me for years until she finally pushed too far. But I walked away, let her financial safety net collapse, and now? She lost her house, her luxury lifestyle is over, and our uncle left his entire fortune to me instead. She thought she was untouchable, now she's the one watching from the outside. I grew up in a family where favoritism wasn't just a thing, it was a lifestyle. My older sister, Victoria, was the star, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the afterthought, the one expected to fend for herself while my parents showered Victoria with attention, praise, and most importantly, money. I'm Lily, 28 years old, a project manager in Seattle. I make a solid living at $135,000 a year and have built my life from the ground up. It wasn't luck, and it definitely wasn't handed to me. Every step of my success came from late nights, hard work, and a relentless drive to be independent. Victoria? Well, let's just say she took a very different path. She's 2 years older than me, 30, and completely dependent on my parents and our uncle for everything. Growing up, Victoria had the perfect childhood, at least, that's how my parents made sure it looked. Private schools, brand new clothes, dance lessons, tutors, if she wanted it, she got it. And if she didn't, my parents found a way to convince her she needed it anyway. She had a car on her 16th birthday, fully paid for. When it was time for college, my parents covered everything: tuition, books, rent, even her weekend getaways. Meanwhile, I was juggling part-time jobs, applying for every scholarship I could find, and eating instant ramen just to get through the month. I didn't expect help because, in my parents' eyes, I wasn't the one worth investing in. After graduation, Victoria got a housewarming gift, literally. My parents and Uncle William paid for the down payment on a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood. She married Daniel, a guy who called himself a salesman, but never really made any sales, and together they built an Instagram-perfect life. But here's the real story behind the picture-perfect facade: the luxury wasn't their own. It was Uncle William's money. Uncle William was different from the rest of my family. My mom's older brother, he was a self-made millionaire who built a real estate empire from nothing. He never had kids of his own, so he financially supported our family, though he had one golden rule. You had to earn what you had. He didn't mind helping Victoria and my parents, as long as they kept up the illusion of responsibility. He paid for Victoria's house, covered my parents' living expenses, and even funded the occasional extravagant vacation. But he never gave her money directly, probably because he knew she'd burn through it in days. With me, though, it was different. Uncle William respected me because he saw how hard I worked. He saw the difference between me and my sister, how I never asked for help but somehow still managed to build something for myself. One day, after I graduated college, he pulled me aside and said, "Lily, you're the only one in this family who understands what it means to stand on your own 2 feet." That moment stuck with me. It was the first time anyone in my family acknowledged how hard I worked. I know Victoria resents that. She might have the house, the fancy car, the picture-perfect family, but she doesn't have Uncle William's respect. And deep down, she knows that without him, she wouldn't have anything at all. For years, I tried to ignore the favoritism, to pretend it didn't matter. But when Christmas came around and Victoria made it painfully clear how little she thought of me, I realized that some people never change. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. Every year, Uncle William planned a family trip for Christmas, and this time was no different. He always went all out, picking some of the most luxurious places for us to stay. It was his way of keeping everyone together, even though we all lived in different cities. This year, he chose a ski resort near Aspen. I wasn't much of a skier, but I didn't care. Aspen in December was stunning, and I was excited. As usual, Uncle William let Victoria handle the reservations. He always trusted her with these things, probably because she had nothing else going on. She loved being in charge of the plans. It gave her a chance to play the role of the perfect organizer while spending someone else's money. I considered offering to help, but I knew better than to step on her toes. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? I had to fly in a little later than everyone else because of work. A major project deadline had kept me tied up, and I couldn't leave until I wrapped everything up. By the time I landed and made my way to the resort, it was already getting dark. The place looked like something out of a Christmas movie: snow-covered mountains, twinkling lights, cozy cabins with smoke curling from their chimneys. Inside, the lodge was even more breathtaking. A massive stone fireplace crackled in the center, its warmth stretching across the entire room. Families sat by the fire sipping hot chocolate, couples walked in from the slopes laughing. The whole scene was picture perfect. I stepped up to the front desk, ready to check in and finally unwind. The woman behind the counter smiled and typed my name into the system. A second later, her brows furrowed. She tried again. Then again. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice apologetic. "I don't have a reservation under your name." At first, I thought it was just a mistake. Maybe Victoria had forgotten to add me. But when I turned around and saw her walking into the lobby, I knew it wasn't a mistake at all. She was dressed like she was about to shoot a commercial for a winter clothing brand. Flawless hair, designer coat, smug expression. Her whole presence screamed self-satisfaction. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice full of fake surprise. "Didn't I tell you? I only booked rooms for the real family. Me, Daniel, Nathan, and of course, Mom and Dad." I felt my stomach drop. I glanced at my parents, expecting at least some kind of reaction. A protest, a correction, a simple "that's not right." But they wouldn't even look at me. They let it happen. Victoria, on the other hand, wasn't done. She tilted her head, feigning concern. "But you're so independent, right?" she said sweetly. "I'm sure you'll figure something out." Then, as if it was the funniest thing in the world, she let out a soft laugh. I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I refused to let her see me upset. That was what she wanted. Over the years, I had learned one thing about Victoria. She thrived on making others feel small. And the best way to get under her skin? Act like she didn't matter at all. So I took a deep breath, forced a polite smile, and said, "All right. Enjoy your trip." Then I grabbed my suitcase and walked out. I could feel her watching me as I left, soaking in the moment, thinking she had won. And maybe for a second she had. But if she thought I was going to beg for a room or go running back to my parents for help, she was dead wrong. Outside, the cold air stung my face, but I barely noticed. I pulled out my phone and started searching. Within minutes, I found another 5-star resort just 10 minutes away. They had a suite available. It was insanely expensive, but I didn't care. If Victoria wanted to act like she had all the power, I was going to remind her that I didn't need her, or my parents, or anyone else in that lodge. Before heading over, I made a call. "Hey," I said the second Kate picked up. "How do you feel about spending Christmas in Aspen?" She didn't even hesitate. "I'm in." I barely had time to explain before I heard Grace's voice in the background. "Me too. Let's do this." By that evening, my best friends were on a plane, and my suite had been transformed into our own personal Christmas retreat. We ordered every room service dish imaginable, burgers, sushi, and an absurd amount of desserts. We popped champagne, turned up Christmas music, and danced around in our pajamas like we were 16 again. Outside, the mountains stretched under a sky full of stars, and for the first time that day, I actually felt like I was on vacation. At some point, between laughing until our sides hurt and eating way too much chocolate, I decided to post a few Instagram stories. A video of us in the hot tub, the mountains in the background. A picture of our over-the-top room service spread. One of us clinking glasses and laughing. I wasn't trying to be petty. Okay, maybe a little. But I wanted Victoria to know that her little stunt hadn't ruined my Christmas. The best part? She watched every single story within minutes. I could almost feel her anger through the screen. Victoria had spent years making me feel like an outsider. Like I didn't belong. But for the first time, it was her watching from the outside. And I knew she hated every second of it. The morning after our Christmas celebration, I woke up to a message from Uncle William. "Breakfast. Your hotel. 9 a.m. That was it. No explanation. No extra words. Just direct and to the point, like always. I knew he had heard what happened, and I wasn't sure what to expect. When I walked into the hotel restaurant, he was already sitting at a corner table, sipping his coffee, looking as sharp and put together as ever. Uncle William had this effortless presence. He didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. People just listened. I sat down, and before I could even say good morning, he asked, "So what the hell happened at the lodge?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. How I arrived and found out I had no reservation. How Victoria stood there, smiling, telling me she had only booked rooms for the real family. How my parents didn't say a word. I kept my voice steady, not wanting to sound bitter or dramatic, just laying out the facts. As I talked, I watched his expression shift, first from disbelief, then to something colder. When I finished, he put down his coffee and exhaled sharply. "I trusted her to handle one thing," he muttered, shaking his head. I shrugged. I figured it wasn't worth fighting about. I just booked my own place and moved on. He looked at me for a long moment, and then in a voice so calm it sent a chill down my spine he said, "Don't worry, Lily. I'll take care of this." I didn't ask what he meant, because with Uncle William those words always meant something. It didn't take long for the consequences to hit. Victoria had no idea what was coming. 1 week after Christmas, her credit card started getting declined. First, she probably thought it was a bank error. But then the reality set in. Uncle William had shut off the money supply. No more endless expense coverage, no more mortgage assistance, no more paid vacations. Nothing. It was instant financial collapse. She tried to keep it quiet, but word spread fast when she had to cancel Nathan's winter break activities because she couldn't afford the fees. Then came the mortgage issue. 4 years, Uncle William had been covering a huge chunk of their house payments, keeping them in their luxury home. Now, they were on their own. And Daniel's pathetic sales commission wasn't enough to cover even half of what they owed. Nathan had to be pulled from his private school. Victoria tried to spin it, telling people they had decided to enroll him in a public school for a more balanced experience. But no one bought it. Meanwhile, my parents were having their own financial crisis. Uncle William had been covering their retirement home fees, their medical expenses, everything. Without him, they were scrambling. And that's when the calls started. First, Victoria was furious. Her first voicemail? Pure rage. "Are you happy now? Do you even understand what you've done? Nathan is crying because we had to cancel his tennis lessons. I hope you're proud of yourself." The second message was even more unhinged. "This isn't funny, Lily. You're being ridiculous. Just talk to Uncle William and fix this. He'll listen to you." Then the tone shifted. The messages started sounding desperate. "Lily, I know I made a mistake at Christmas, but do you really want to see your nephew suffer? Do you want Mom and Dad to lose their home? We're family. My parents weren't any better. My mom called me in tears. We don't know what to do, sweetheart. We might have to move. We can't afford to stay here without William's help. We're too old to start over." Dad sent me a long guilt-tripping email. "You know, Lily, what you're doing is cruel. Family is supposed to take care of each other. You turned Uncle William against us. You should be ashamed." Ashamed? I sat there staring at the screen, stunned by the hypocrisy. For years, they let Victoria treat me like I didn't exist. They sat there while she humiliated me at Christmas, said nothing while she excluded me from family events, acted like I didn't matter. And now, the second they lost their free ride, they expected me to step in and save them? Not once did any of them say, "I'm sorry." Not once did any of them acknowledge how they had treated me. They weren't sorry for what they did, they were sorry they got caught. So I ignored them. Every call, every text, every guilt trip. Victoria, my parents, Daniel, they were all learning the same lesson at the same time. You can't treat people like they're disposable, and then expect them to save you when things fall apart. And Uncle William, he wasn't picking up their calls either. Because, as he had told me over breakfast that day, sometimes people have to lose everything before they understand the value of anything. It didn't take long for the illusion to completely shatter. Victoria and Daniel couldn't even make it 2 months without Uncle William's money. Without his support, their finances crumbled like a house of cards. The mortgage fell behind. Their savings, what little they had, dried up. Their fancy neighborhood, their high-end lifestyle, their perfectly curated image? Gone. The house went up for sale. It wasn't even a choice, they had no way to keep it. Without Uncle William covering the payments, they were drowning in debt. They moved into a tiny rental on the outskirts of town, and Victoria was absolutely miserable. She tried to keep up appearances at first. Her Instagram was still filled with filtered, polished photos, captions about embracing a simpler life and finding joy in new beginnings. She made it sound like downsizing was a personal decision, like she had chosen to leave the luxury behind. But people weren't stupid. Her rich mom friends stopped inviting her to their brunches and charity events. The same women she used to sip overpriced lattes with at exclusive cafes now pretended not to see her at Target. Yes, Target, the place she used to mock as for middle-class moms. Now she was there, pushing a cart through the home goods aisle, looking over her shoulder like she was afraid someone might recognize her. And Nathan? He was actually doing fine. He had adjusted quickly to his new school, made friends, joined the soccer team. If anything, he seemed happier without his mother micromanaging every second of his life with private tutors and elite summer camps. Daniel, on the other hand, was struggling. He had always relied on Uncle William's connections to make his sales job work. Without those leads, he had nothing. The long golf meetings, the extravagant business lunches, over ***. He had to actually work, and unsurprisingly, he wasn't very good at it. And my parents? They were just as bad. They had to sell their condo in the fancy retirement community and move into a small plain apartment. Mom kept insisting it was temporary, that they would work things out with Uncle William. But deep down, I think they knew the truth. Still, they kept trying to guilt me into fixing it. Mom called every few days with dramatic sob stories. Lily, we're not used to living like this. It's so hard. Can't you talk to William? He listens to you. Dad was even bolder. He sent me another email, this one with a direct request for money. Since you're doing so well now, maybe you can help us out. We took care of you when you were younger, it's only fair you return the favor. I actually laughed when I read it. They had spent years ignoring me, letting Victoria walk all over me, acting like I wasn't part of the family. Now suddenly I was important. Now they needed me. But not once did they apologize. Not once did they say we were wrong. It was always about what I could do for them. I ignored the calls. Ignored the emails. Let them sit with the consequences of their own choices. And Uncle William? He wasn't budging either. Victoria tried one last pathetic stunt. She showed up at his office unannounced. He told me later that she had started with fake humility, talking about how much she had grown and learned from this experience. Then when that didn't work, she broke down crying in the lobby. Security had to escort her out. When Uncle William called me that evening, he didn't even sound angry. Just tired. She still doesn't get it, he said. She thinks this is temporary. That I'll change my mind. But crocodile tears don't pay bills. And just like that, Victoria was out of options. For the first time in her life, she had to face reality. No more handouts. No more shortcuts. No more safety net. She thought she could manipulate her way back into Uncle William's wallet. But what she didn't realize was there was no wallet left for her anymore. A few months passed, and while Victoria and my parents were barely keeping their heads above water, my life had never been better. I got promoted. Not just any promotion, senior project manager, a big raise, stock options, the whole package My salary jumped to $165,000 a year, and for the first time, I felt like I had truly made it. Not just financially, but personally. I had built this life without handouts, without shortcuts, without anyone else's money. To celebrate, I did something I had been dreaming about for years. I bought my first home. A beautiful modern condo in one of Seattle's best neighborhoods. Not too big, not over the top, just perfect for me. I handled everything on my own. My own money, my own credit, my own terms. When I got the keys, I stood in my empty living room and just took it all in. This feeling? Victoria would never know what this felt like. She was still desperately trying to hold onto her past life, refusing to accept that it was gone. Her latest attempt? A minimalist living blog. Oh yes. The same woman who once mocked people for shopping at budget stores was now writing posts about finding joy in the simple things and learning to appreciate home-cooked meals, which of course was just a nice way of saying they couldn't afford restaurants anymore. But the internet is ruthless and people saw right through her. Her comment sections were brutal. This is just forced humility. You're broke, not enlightened. Girl, you used to brag about spending $500 on brunch. Sit down. She couldn't handle the backlash, and her blog fizzled out just as fast as it started. Meanwhile, my parents were still clinging to the belief that Uncle William would change his mind. Every time I spoke to him, he told me the same thing, they still don't get it, And the worst part? Not one of them had apologized. Not once had Victoria admitted, I was awful to you. Not once had my parents said, we should have stood up for you. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They were just sorry they lost their money. Uncle William saw it too. One evening he called me, and after catching up on life, he told me something I never expected. I've updated my will. I sat up straighter. What? Victoria and your parents are out. His voice was calm, matter of fact. I'm done with them, Lily. They only cared about what I could give them. They don't deserve anything. I was stunned. I had never expected him to do something that drastic. But at the same time, I understood. Then who? You. Silence. You're the only one in this family who actually built something. The only one who understands what it means to stand on your own. I know you don't need my money, but if something happens to me, I'd rather it go to someone who actually deserves it. I was speechless. And for the first time in my life, I finally knew what it felt like to be chosen. But the truth? I didn't need it. Because I had already won. Not by getting his money. Not by watching Victoria and my parents struggle. But by living a life that was truly mine. Kate and Grace flew in to celebrate my housewarming, and as we sat on my new balcony, watching the city lights, I realized something. They were my real family. Not the people I shared DNA with. Not the people who only cared when they needed something. But the ones who had stood by me through everything. Kate raised her glass. To you, Lily. Grace smirked. And to Victoria for making the dumbest mistake of her life. We all laughed, and for the first time in years I felt free. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I didn't even need closure. Because the best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving forward. And I was never looking back.